Buenas tardes. Good evening. This meeting is now convened. The time is 5:01 p.m. Board members present in the board auditorium are Trustee Allen, Trustee Wade, Trustee Santos, Trustee Cruz, Trustee Bluford-Daniels, Trustee Baker. Board members present via Zoom are Trustee Hernandez and Trustee Guidry. I would like to ask everyone to please silence all cell phones and remind everyone to please adhere to the district's mask mandate. If you are not wearing a mask, you will be asked to leave the premises. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of the special meeting held on December 16th
So move Santos.
and the agenda review meeting held on January 6th?
So move Santos again.
Is there a second?
Second, Bluford-Daniels.
I have a motion by Trustee Santos and a second by Trustee Bluford-Daniels. Please vote. Seven, four, no. Sorry. 8-4. 0 against, 0 abstentions. We have now come to the portion of our meeting where we hear from speakers to specific agenda items. We have one speaker registered this evening who shall be limited to 2 minutes per board policy. Please speak to the agenda item you have signed up for. We also ask that speakers stay on the topic and refrain from naming individuals, especially students, as their identity is protected under law, but you may name your own child. The item held for registered speaker is from the February 10th regular board meeting agenda, K1, approval of proposed revisions to board policy, AE local, educational philosophy, second reading. Our speaker has registered to address the board via Zoom. Please remember that if you are signed up to speak via Zoom, we must see you live with your camera on as you speak. If you are watching the meeting live on another device, please mute the meeting audio when you speak to audio. To avoid audio interference, turn on your camera and begin speaking. Ms. Jones, please admit speaker Allison Newport.
No speaker has signed in yet.
This concludes our hearing of registered speakers for agenda items. We are now ready to consider a discussion and report item. A3, acceptance of board monitoring update, presentation of Goal 3, Progress Measure 3. Superintendent House, we are ready for your update. Colleagues, please hold your questions until the presentation is complete.
Thank you, President Cruz. I'm going to ask that Dr. Allison Madney join us at the podium and get started with the presentation.
We've been joined by Trustee Dygard.
To do what?
This presentation.
Madam President, if it's okay, I'd like to postpone this part of the agenda review so we can honor everybody's time due to the storm, the potential storm that's coming. So we could either, if we're done quickly with the agenda review, then get to it, but if not, postpone it to a later day.
Move it to the end of the...
We can either move it to, depending on the time, how quickly we get through the agenda, so that way we can let everybody go home, including ourselves.
So you can do it one of two ways. You can do a motion to move it to a specific place on the agenda, or you can just do a motion to table, but that will require a second motion to take it off the table.
Okay, I move to table this until,
Just to table the motion.
just to table the motion.
Second.
We have a motion by Trustee Santos and a second by Bluford-Daniels. Please vote.
Discussion?
Oh, discussion. Thank you.
Can we table it to a specific time? That if we haven't, because our superintendent has prepared this report, unless, Mr. Superintendent, it is your preference that we postpone this until another day?
No, that's not my preference.
Okay.
We've been watching closely the weather. The freeze band is supposed to hit between 6:30, between 6 and 8 or
Okay.
whatnot. So, of course, ground temperatures have been cooperative in Harris County as well. And even though 32 degrees is freezing, that doesn't mean that we're going to have freezing precipitation on the
Okay.
ground.
Madam President, how many items have been pulled for discussion? Is it a lot or a few?
So well then,
Then can I amend this, Ms. McBride, to say that we will table the strategic plan discussion until 6 o'clock?
It's the monitoring, progress
it's
Oh, the
not,
monitoring.
It's a
I'm
progress-
sorry, my misunderstanding. Yeah, still.
Okay.
Is there an objection from anyone to make amending that motion?
yes, because if we can get out of here before 6 o'clock. So as soon as we're done with the agenda items, we do the GPM and then go. So if it's before 6 PM, then it's before 6 PM.
So then we need to vote on the amendment. Since there is an objection, we need to go ahead and take a, because you were moving to amend her motion, so we need to formally vote on it.
Okay, so let me clarify. I move that we postpone the goal progress measure presentation until after we get done with the business. No set time, just as soon as we're done.
Okay, then are we voting on the amendment first?
Are you is one microphone? So trustee Santos, did you just clarify your original motion?
Yes.
Okay, so with that clarification, trustee Dygar, do you still want to make your amendment?
No.
Okay, so then we can vote on trustee Santos's motion.
Thank you. Please vote.
So it was your opinion, though, to go ahead and move forward. You wanted to go ahead and go ahead and go through, with the presentation, though.
Well, we're doing it today. We're still doing it today.
We're still doing it today?
Seven, four, zero against, zero abstentions. We will now consider voting items held for discussion from the agenda review business agenda. Trustees each month. Sorry, my mic wasn't on. Trustees each month, administration will bring forth revised policies with changes recommended by the TASB. These policies will start off as action items with the agenda review meeting for the first reading. Similar to the regular monthly board meeting, each month all action items for agenda review, including these policies, will begin on the consent agenda. If a trustee would like an item held from consent, they should notify Sylvia Trend by 8 a.m. on the Monday prior to the voting meeting. As a reminder, trustees had an opportunity prior to this meeting to submit questions before agenda review to the administration. The Q&A document was sent to all trustees via email, is in your SharePoint under February board meeting documents, and has been posted on the district's website. Our first item held for discussion is K1, approval of proposed revisions to board policies, performance appraisal, and DNA local performance appraisal evaluation of teachers, first reading. This item is being held at the request of trustee Guidry. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion by trustee Santos and a second by trustee Bluford Daniels. Is there any discussion? Trustee Guidry?
Thank you, President Cruz. I just have a general question, Superintendent House. If you could just explain to the community the major difference between current assessment TADS and the T-test.
Absolutely, be glad to do so. I'm going to ask that our Chief Talent Officer join us. He's at the podium. He's been intricately involved in this process, and I think would be excited to share this insight.
Thank you. Good evening. So there are many similarities between TADS and T-tests, and hearing the question about the differences, I will start with the one that is most significant and most immediate, and that is that there is a different rubric that outlines instructional excellence for the district. So T-tests as an evaluation system includes a T-test rubric that more than 300 districts in the state currently use. Under TADS, there's a rubric that outlines what effective instruction looks like across a number of indicators, and this would be shifting to what is used across those other districts and then going through a process to train our teachers and our appraisers about outline of what instructional excellence looks like, and really would be a basis for our work with our teachers over the next year and years as they think about how to effectively implement instruction in the classroom. There are some other places where there could be differences in the implementation, because we're going through a process and have been going through a process to collect input about what T-tests should look like in some of the details. So in the policy, you'll see that there are not that many proposed changes. So something like student performance has been a part of TADS, will be a part of T-tests, and there will be opportunity for us to continue to collect input about how that is exactly calculated. The other thing that I would highlight from a strategic standpoint with respect to a difference is we have heard a lot of negative perceptions about TADS from teachers, from administrators, from others, including through a survey as recently as December, when we heard from over 1,000 of our employees. And T-test gives us an opportunity to move away from those negative perceptions of a system that has been in place, to move to a new system for teacher evaluation that has the support. This transition has the support of HFT, it has the support of HAZA, and gives us an opportunity for a new system that doesn't carry some baggage that TADS has.
Thank you. And just a quick it's my understanding that there is an appeal process, correct? So the teachers will have an opportunity to appeal the assessment by the initial appraiser?
Yes, the current policy and the proposed revised policy contains a process for teachers to request a second review of components of the appraisal.
You're muted, Trustee Guidry.
Trustee Guidry, you're muted.
I'm so sorry. So how much, how heavily does student performance weigh on the appraisal process?
This is not yet determined for T-tests. It's one of those places where we're collecting and will be collecting input at the policy level. We're maintaining the language that indicates that student performance is one of the components of a teacher's evaluation, but we have not made a determination for the weight of that.
Thank you so much, sir. I appreciate you.
Trustee Hernandez? Okay. Trustee Wade?
On? Thank you. My question is, how long will it take to train in the T-test? I realize we're looking at policies, but in the policy, there was nowhere to describe how long this plan should take place.
Sure, I'll name two things. First is there is a state level training that happens that provides certification to anyone who's going to be an observer of teachers through T-tests. And that is training that will, in order to provide sufficient opportunities that work with schedules for all of our appraisers in the district, that will take many months. Our intent here is once at our request, if the board adopts the policy change to say T-test will be our evaluation system, we will pretty immediately begin assigning appraisers to that certification training. The second thing I will say is it's also an ongoing process. So into next school year and into years beyond, part of T-test is having ongoing activity with our appraisers to calibrate and norm to make sure when Principal A is providing feedback to a teacher, that aligns with the feedback that Principal B would give that same teacher seeing the same exact practice.
Thank you.
Trustee Blueford Daniels?
Thank you, Madam President. I had several concerns. Fortunately for all of you, I left my notes at home, but I did make some notes on here, so I'll come back around and I'll have them next week. But my concern is, obviously, as we talk about the appraisals, I know I sent in a Q&A questioning of the appraisal. I'm always afraid that people will pick and choose individuals to be identified as appraisals, meaning pick and choosing, meaning their friends and they have close relationships with or whatever at particular campuses. How can we alleviate that opportunity with this new process?
Sure, we appreciated your question, trustee, and as a state requirement in T-Test, there are certain types of individuals who can become certified and serve as an appraiser, and part of that is they have to go through our local, the training that I referred to before and any other training that we say is necessary to become approved as an appraiser. So, next week there's an annual item on the agenda that happens where we bring to you every year. Here are the people who are approved to serve as appraisers. What I think we shared and what I'll share here is that an appraiser cannot be someone who is in a teacher level role, a teacher of record at the same campus. Our appraisers under TADS and our intention with T-Test is typically that the primary appraisers would be principals and assistant principals or tier 2 leaders. There is more flexibility there for someone from the district level or people in other roles, like specialist roles, to serve as appraisers, and that happens now and could happen under T-Test, but we determine in our system like who can be assigned to be an appraiser.
And thank you for that, because again, like as we talk about goal 2, and to increase, the whole objective is to increase the goal 2 by 8 points, correct? Mm-hmm. And so in doing so, you've got people who may be at a school that's a D and F rated campus. If they're an F rated campus and it's based on, from what I can understand, the diagram, then if they're identified as improving, they could rise from an F to a C. Will they be identified as a successful teacher? Would that be as far as raising the bottom line? Because that's going to be per campus, correct? It won't be, in other words, I'm trying to put this in perspective. Say I'm at Wilcox and I'm an F-rated campus. And in doing so, I've got 6th graders. And they raise from an F-rated campus to a C-rated campus. So am I identified then as a teacher who has improved, for the most part, who has risen to the occasion to be, I have raised the bottom line, in other words, raised the level of performance. So will I be eligible for a stipend? Just what?
Thanks. T-Test is an important component of what we're doing because we do believe that when teachers are getting great feedback, they can improve and they can get results for their students, which could come together and help a school overall raise its performance level. At the same time, a teacher's evaluation rating under T-Test is about their individual performance. So they will get observations and walkthroughs through which they get ratings for the practices that are showing up in their classroom. They also will have a student performance component, as they do under TADS, that is about their impact with students in their classroom. So I hope that's answering the question. I'll just say like the T-Test evaluation rating is going to be about like a teacher's individual performance and not directly connected to an overall school's performance, even though we would expect those things to correlate when we get teachers coming together collectively, providing really good instruction to students. We expect that the school will be able to improve its performance.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Trustee Santos?
Thank you, Madam President, Superintendent House. I'm sorry, what was your name again? Grant Skinner. Okay, thank you, Mr. Grant Skinner. So what, will T-test shift the direction of professional development?
I would say absolutely, in the sense that we should be at the aggregate level, get data from our evaluation system that tells us where there are priorities for professional development. Within the T-test rubric, there are 8 components that will be scored that are about instruction or the learning environment. If one of those 8 components is one that is rated across the board at a lower level than others, that tells our team where we need to focus some professional development.
So we will be able to differentiate on T-test, especially since this is supposed to be able to identify our best teachers. Okay. So will the best teachers be able to opt out of repetitive, unnecessary professional development?
Let me answer that question. One of the things that we want to focus our efforts on is making sure that professional development is meaningful and is aligned to the needs of the teacher. So as we look at our evaluation system, it should be a collective effort it should work hand in hand together. So I don't want to and don't expect to see professional development. And we, of course, have work to do, but that is a part of what our focus will be in our schools offices, is ensuring that we have meaningful, productive professional development that's aligned to individuals' teacher needs.
Right, and I was just paralleling the earned tiered autonomy to teachers that have earned their badges, right? If we want to identify teachers as best teachers, could we potentially, good campuses are allowed to fly on their own. That I was just kind of mirroring that. So how will T-test maximize instructional minutes and protect teacher planning time?
I would say T-test itself should not be having an impact on instructional time. So a teacher's practice, a teacher's work is not impacted by having someone observe their practice, which is a major component of this. And then with respect to other components, we're going to leverage existing things like existing assessments to inform how we calculate something like student performance. So our goal will be to ensure that T-test itself is not changing what teachers are doing day to day in the classroom outside of their practice. It's not changing how they are spending their time with students.
Okay, and so how has student success improved in districts that have implemented T-tests? Do you have any data on that?
No, but we'd be glad to pull some.
Please and thank you. And to to Trustee Bluford Daniels' point, so T-test will be less subjective than TADS, and how so?
You said less subjective. I think the important piece of our T-test implementation is in that training component and that ongoing calibration component that I talked about earlier, that with any evaluation system, it's important to sustain that effort to ensure that as new appraisers come into the district and as appraisers go from year to year, that we're monitoring and supporting the consistency in the types of feedback that teachers receive.
Okay, thank you so much. Dr. Grant Martin? No,
Mr.
Mr. Grant Martin, thank you.
Please vote.
Oh, no, Danny wanted to be in the queue, I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. Trustee Hernandez?
Thank you. So I've been a teacher that has been evaluated by the TAD system and an appraiser with TADS, and I'm happy to see the change in how HISD is evaluating teachers. No system is perfect, but I'm happy to see the change. My concern, and I've mentioned this to you, Mr. House, before, is the vast amount of roles that can appraise. I would say that we need to look at that a little bit more carefully to make sure that the specific titles that are eligible for appraising teachers are just looked at carefully. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oops.
Please vote. Sorry, Trustee Bluford Daniels?
Thank you for that clarity. But again, we talked about the 10 best teachers. I'm just concerned that those schools that are low performing will not have the opportunity for, even though their standard, their bottom line performance measure may come up, I'm concerned that they will not be identified or have the opportunity to be identified through this evaluation system as best teacher, or what's the word that's normally used?
High growth.
What is, high performance? Was it high performance? High performing teacher.
High performing, but what you just said, I think is what you're looking for.
What is it called?
Growth is, it's interesting. It's a great question because I transitioned as a principal in the next to lowest performing school in the state. Dr. Watts was in a very similar situation as principal. I saw it as an opportunity for the first time as a principal to be recognized for the growth in my building, and so did my teachers. And it was incredible to see over the course of time what that looked like in some of the lowest performing schools with high performing teachers, because that's where the recognition happened the most and the best was with the lowest performing schools, because that's where the growth opportunities are. A lot of people don't realize that sometimes even in your highest performing schools, it's harder to get more growth in many instances.
Exactly, because and for the most part, they will remain somewhat stagnant. I got that. But I just want to make sure that there's opportunity to show that growth from those low-performing schools that had not traditionally been identified as such. And then once we do that and raise that floor, then we incorporate a way to highlight that to the communities and to the city, that these schools that are normally not chosen to be school of choice or to send children to, that because of the extra effort and evaluation of the individual performance of the teachers, we've got better teachers here. So instead of sending your kids out of the community and sending them somewhere else, you can have them remain in the community, because we're concentrating on having the best qualified teachers over there. So that's very important to me, obviously, because, I talk about it all the time, we've got so many D and F schools, and I'm going to continuously fight to get the best opportunity for those teachers.
Absolutely.
And to have the best, to create the best environment for the students. So thank you.
And what I will say, without divulging too much into our strategic work, this will align very well with what we do. I know during the interview process, when you all interviewed me, there were things that I shared that I aspired for. What I can tell you is that what you'll see, some of the things in our strategic plan eventually will align very well with what you just mentioned. Yeah.
And I really do. I appreciate that, because again, we just can't keep kicking those kids the can down the road and not establish some mechanism to improve the opportunity for those children, those traditional low-performing campuses. So I know I don't speak y'all's necessarily language, but you understand the gist of my concern, and to improve the progress measures and monitoring of those students.
Trustee Guidry?
I just have a quickie. So I just want to be clear. The evaluation system, it should be able to tell us which teachers are helping children grow from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
All
Yes,
right,
ma'am.
it wouldn't tell us within that. We would know within that year.
Absolutely.
Thank you, sir.
Trustee Santos?
Thank you, President Cruz. So, Superintendent House, how will T-test be tied to the TIA, if it's going to be tied to TIA, the teacher incentive allotment?
So I'll have our Chief Talent Officer, Jeremy Grant Skinner, to come up and talk a little bit about that. That commitment has not been made as of yet, but I'll let Mr. Grant Skinner share a little bit more insight.
Sure. I think it was last April, the district had publicly communicated an intent in applying for to be a part of the teacher incentive allotment at some point. We haven't taken any steps at this point to do that. We are focused on updating our teacher evaluation system through this adoption of T-tests and the work associated with that. It does present an opportunity for us to make a good case for consideration for TIA in the future. And Trustee Bluford Daniels, as she was speaking, I was certainly thinking about the opportunities that TIA can provide for the district to through additional compensation for teachers who are not only performing well, but choosing to work in our highest need schools to earn more and be recognized and therefore stay in those schools and not choose to leave and go to other schools that may have less need. So what I can say now is we are focused on implementing T-tests well. And we know that one of the benefits of that, in addition to the benefits I talked about earlier, is it should put us in a situation where we can access those additional state funds that many, many other districts, including some of our closest neighbors, are already either accessing or on their path to access, on the path to accessing, and we have to be competitive. So we want that to be on the table for future consideration.
So I have two questions, and it can be put in as a board referral. But I'd like to know how the teacher incentive allotment, those dollars make it to the district. That's the number one question. So I know if a teacher leaves the district, they can take that, their credit with them, and yeah, and it'll follow the teacher. However, my second question, and again, this is a board referral, instead of, depending on how those dollars are moved to the district, instead of having like, Judith is the star teacher, she makes $40,000 more, I make X number of dollars more, or I don't have the opportunity for that growth as much as Judith does. Could those dollars be put into our insurance premium to lower the dollars down or actually get better insurance for all employees as opposed to an individualized? I mean, this is what, it's a board referral, and it would benefit the collective as opposed to just, I mean, the teacher would still earn their badge of honor, whatever it is, that the credit for the TIA, but could it potentially reduce everybody's costs in insurance premiums or get better quality insurance?
I'd be very surprised if that was allowed, but we'll get you a bona fide answer via the referral.
Yes,
Yep.
because there might be a loophole if that policy wasn't correctly written from TEA. So, thank you.
Trustee Dygard?
Thank you. So what I'm understanding, Mr. Superintendent, is that the student performance metric in this is a growth metric.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Dealing with
So-
weather as we move
What I'm
forward.
understanding in listening to my colleagues' questions is that the student performance metric in this system will be a growth metric.
I'll say we're committed to making sure that that student performance metric is more than just an absolute comparison. And some folks who have been in the district for a long time may remember that more than a decade ago, the district had an evaluation system that had a student performance metric that was simply an absolute measure. And the feedback on that was negative, and that does not align with best practice.
Okay, thank you. So it's a growth metric, number one, okay. And then what I'm hearing is, and we've had this conversation, our current system rates our teachers as 90% district-wide or effective or highly effective. But in our lowest performing campuses, it's only 70%. So this will allow you to identify the professional development needs, as well as identify your talent to then incentivize talent to fix this inequity.
And again, yes, that's
Okay.
a part of the strategic work as well, but you're on the right
This is
track.
the first part of it. You need this in order to do that other
You're
work.
on the right track.
That's, okay, thank you.
Please vote. 8-4-0 against. Oh, sorry. Nine, 4-0 against, 0 abstentions. Our next item held for discussion is K2, approval of the establishment of board policy EF local instructional resources, first reading. This item is being held at the request of trustee Wade. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second? I have a motion by trustee Santos and a second by trustee Allen. Is there any discussion? Okay. Please vote. K2. Nine, 4-0 against, 0 abstentions. Our next item held for discussion is K5, approval of the establishment of board policy EHBJ local special programs, innovative and magnet programs. First reading, this item is being held at the request of trustees Guidry and Wade. May I have a motion? We have a motion by trustee Dygard and a second by trustee Wade. Is there any discussion? It's K5, the establishment of EHBJ local. And it's on the screen. Is there any discussion? Okay, please vote.
I'm sorry, I was in the queue. President
Sorry,
Cruz.
trustee Guidry, go ahead.
And actually, we could vote. I was going to say I pulled it, but the question I had was answered. So I appreciate you honoring my pulling the item.
Thank you for updating us. Please vote. Trustee Bluford Daniels. Okay.
Again, yeah, we're almost safe because I left my notes. But I had been concerned about this magnet program, and I know I did send some information into the Q&A, because my question, my real concern is, and I want you all to understand my concern, is we have these magnet programs at some of these campuses, and they're already, some of them have waiting list. And I don't know if you're looking at it as part of your strategic plan to perhaps, if you have a waiting list for one campus, to have that, another campus that does not have that program, consider putting programs somewhere else. And as I read this, that I don't have in front of me, it says that the campuses have to apply for the magnet programs.
And I'd like to invite Dr. Denise Watts to the microphone to share a little insight in reference to this question about waiting lists.
Oh, she tells, I don't know.
And if I could just be clear for the trustees, the recommendation is simply to move your existing policy that you've been working under for years and years and years to a new code. No changes to the words. So that is what our discussion should be tonight on first reading. Are you in agreement or disagreement with moving the policy from the code that it was, which is TASB is discontinuing it, and moving it to another code? There's been no recommended changes to the text.
Okay, so as we speak about the codes, I can get it back aligned to the board, the agenda, as we talk about, because my vote could be dependent on if there has been discussion on realigning some of those magnet programs.
That will be addressed in the strategic plan.
Okay, to be continued.
We have a workshop. We have a
Okay,
workshop
all
on
right.
February
February
17th.
I didn't get that memo, but okay.
We got a calendar invite, yeah. All right, please vote, trustees. Nine, 4, 0 against, 0 abstentions. Our last item held for discussion for the agenda review agenda is case 7. Make sure I'm in the right order, yeah. Approval of proposed revisions to board policy FFA local wellness and health services physical examinations first reading. This item is being held at the request of trustee Guidry. May I have a motion?
Second, Wilbur Daniels.
The motion by trustee Dygard and a second by trustee Bluefer Daniels. Is there any discussion? Trustee Guidry.
Thank you. So I'm looking at package page 53, and I think it's 1 of 1, where it looks like basically it's saying prior to participating in UIL, every student has to have a physical examination. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Now, I guess my question goes to, because it's so important to the campuses, to the students, now you're requiring every student who's participating to have an examination. Is there going to be some provision that the district is trying to provide for those who cannot afford to have an examination? And is that something that could be written into our policy?
And actually, there's really no change here at all. I'm going to let our Chief Academic Officer, Dr. Sean Bird, share some additional insight in reference to this, Trustee Guidry.
So, good evening. This practice has been going on in the district for the last several years. So students that participate in marching band, those are the students who are affected. They currently do get athletic physicals, and those are kept on campus with their band director in case there's some incident that happens at an event. If students are unable to pay for that, there is support from school. So we've had an event in the district the past 3 years where we had, actually those were free of charge. That was a partnership we had with St. Joseph's. That we're not going to, that will not continue this year at this point because they don't have the funding to continue that. However, when that drew about 400 kids a year would come for that event. But every school has their own, they have their own partnerships with doctors, and it's typically what happens is that the number of them donate those services. So, they're about $10 to $20 per child, but if kids are not able to do it, there's funds, the campus supports that, not the district necessarily.
So the way they had it before with St. Joseph, was that the campus or was that the district?
That was a district event that was held for the past 3 years. And I talked to the athletic director today, and we're exploring different opportunities that we can do to still have district events as well as the individual school events that are held.
Yeah, I would like to see that. If we've had it, take it away now, I don't think it's a beneficial thing. And did we explore perhaps, I'm sorry guys, I'm getting a little feedback, so I'm doing the best I can. Did we explore perhaps soliciting other medical facilities of St. Joseph?
Yeah, we're in the process now of doing that for larger district events. so that we can continue to have the large district event as well as the school events that are in neighborhoods.
And the school events that are in neighborhoods, that is up to the specific principal.
Right.
Correct?
Yeah, the athletic trainers and the coaches at the school generally arrange those for the students at those schools.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Trustee Allen?
Thank you. I have a concern about the wording here. I know that the changes went from athletic programs to any program so that the marching band could be added. But my concern is that it says, prior to participating in a designated UIL league program, and there are a lot of designated, my thing is that, my concern is that, should we use pre-designated or predetermined so that we could add the marching band? Because the UIL has, they have one-act plays, they have number sense, they have listening, and they have music memory and social studies, maps and graphs and all that kind of stuff that is still UIL programs. And there should not be a physical exam needed for those types of programs. So I know what Trustee Guidry just said about it including all UIL programs, but I think the intention of this wording change was so that we could add marching band, which means that, just like it says down here, that the superintendent, extracurricular program identified by the superintendent, I think it would be clearer if we said, prior to participating in predetermined UIL programs or pre-designated, so that we will actually know that we're talking about marching band and not number sense contest.
Dr. Byrd?
Yes, I agree with you that the intention is just for marching band, and I had to go back and look myself. When I read all UIL, I had to go back and make sure myself it was just marching band, but we can look at the adjustment.
So do I need to make a motion to use predetermined, or you all can just look at it before we get to next week?
We can look at it before we get to second reading.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Trustee Hernandez? No? Okay,
I'm not in the queue, no.
thank you. Trustee Santos?
Thank you, President Cruz. So is it because, back to Trustee Guidry's point, I believe, that the free partnerships with the, you said St. Joseph's, does each individual campus have to go out and find their partnerships?
So it's my understanding that, and just from my experience as a principal before, is that there may be district events, but not all kids are going to go to the central location. So there are always opportunities. Schools, athletic trainers have relationships with doctors and sports medicine professionals. So it's common that they set up for their own students just for convenience.
So out of kind of, to be helpful, could we set up something from north, south, east, and west? I know Harris Health does free physicals, and so UH was actually looking for people their medical school to partner with them so that their prospective doctors could give kids physicals too. So I don't know if it's possible to do that regionally, so that way kids from all sides of town have access to that.
So we can definitely explore different partnerships with different groups.
Thank you so much.
Please vote. Oh. 9-4, 0 against, 0 abstentions. We are now ready to approve the balance of the agenda review business agenda items by consensus. May I have a motion?
So move, Santos.
May I have a motion by Trustee Santos and a second by Trustee Dygard Is there any discussion? Please vote. Nine, 4, 0 against, 0 abstentions. Our next order of business is to consider items to be presented at the regular board meeting of February 10th, 2022. As a reminder, trustees, everyone had the opportunity prior to this meeting to submit questions to the administration. The Q&A document was sent to all trustees via email, is in your SharePoint under February board meeting documents, and has been posted on the district's website. So far, trustees have requested that we pull the following items for discussion. I'm going to read the list, and then trustees, I was trying to help in the interest of time to have us send the items that you want pulled before, but I realize that's a change, so I'll go through what's already been pulled, and if you want anything additional, please let me know. So I have E1, G1, I1, I3, I4, K1, L1, L2. And I'll just go down the table, and then I'll get the colleagues on Zoom. Trustee Baker, any additional items pulled for discussion?
No, Madam President.
Thank you. Trustee Dygard?
No, thank you.
Trustee Blueford Daniels?
No, thank you, they've been pulled.
Okay, Trustee Santos? Trustee Wade, anything additional? Trustee
No,
Allen?
mine have been pulled.
Yeah, they're so efficient. Look at y'all. Oh, Trustee Guidry, anything additional? And
No, it
Trustee
is-
Hernandez, you're good? Okay, awesome.
Yeah, I'm all good. Thank you.
Keeping consistent with the norms at agenda review, we will do 2 rounds of 2 minutes per trustee for each item. If trustees would like to add additional time for comments and discussion, that can be done by the will of the board with a motion, second, and a vote. So let's start with E1. Authority to negotiate and execute an interlocal agreement with Thomas Bus Collaborative Farber Specialty Vehicles for purchase of a mobile student recruitment and enrollment unit. Trustee Allen.
I think this is an awesome idea, but in my 35 years of dealing with education, I have encountered some obstacles getting students to enroll. So one of my first questions is, will the enrollment bus be able to go to private residences? So like if you have this extremely obese parent that cannot get out of the house, will it be able to go to private residences?
Not something that we have thought about, but it has 4 wheels, and we'll definitely consider special circumstances as we move forward. The idea was to look at a kind of a central location that's convenient in different areas of the city or at a school, but we can look at special situations and definitely do our best to make accommodations as needed.
Also, will they be allowed to help illiterate parents? Or are they just there and all we can do is be here?
The idea is to have individuals on that bus that can be there as a support to parents, regardless of whether they speak English, whether they don't have the literacy skills to be able to support themselves. So the idea is for it to be a support system for our community.
Will the bus be able to be requested by someone? I've had like a student that wanted to get back in school, but the parent was on drugs, and, if you can come to, can a student request that a bus? And this would go with the private residency stuff.
I think what our focus would be is really trying to work closely with our wraparound specialists. That's the job, is them being a connector in some situations to make sure that they have supports. But again, we haven't gotten into the details like that. Dr. Watts, I don't know if there's anything else you'd like to share in reference to this, being that it's happening under the school's office.
I think the purpose of this enrollment vehicle is to be as agile as possible, and we will exploit that to the fullest potential to make sure that we can get students enrolled.
Thank you.
Trustee Dygard.
I want to say thank you to the well-thought-out Q&A response about how you're going to evaluate the impact of this program, so thank you.
Trustee Baker.
Yes, my question is that a seat that is being purchased with the ESSER funds, and I just want to know that once those funds are gone, will the district be required to maintain a cost for maintenance? And if so, will that bring a substantial increase to our budget?
This is actually a singular bus. So in retrospect to our entire fleet that we have in the district, and Mrs. Paul, you might want to share a little bit. I don't know how many buses we have in our entire fleet, but this would be a fraction of the maintenance that would be necessary in comparison to our entire fleet. But Ms. Paul, our Chief Operating Officer, can provide some insight in reference to what this particular upkeep and maintenance might look like in comparison to our entire fleet. Yes, ma'am.
I think it won't even make a blip in our operation.
Okay.
We have 1,000 buses, so we should be more than okay with adding one more.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, our next item held, or is this for the next one, or are you, right now? Okay, sorry, Trustee Blueford Daniels?
Thank you, because I thought it was a good question. And it's going to be one bus. So how will it be able to facilitate the needs across the district?
So the idea is to utilize it, as Dr. Watts talked about, is to be as agile as possible. Identify in town where the needs are, working with principals, working with assistant superintendents, working with community as well. And when we find those needs, we deploy the bus to ensure that we take our services to where they are.
And I love the idea. I love the idea. It's thinking outside the box. I would actually probably want to go a step further once it's implemented and perhaps have that availability like in various quadrants of the district, so that we have more mobility to be able to take advantage of the opportunities to get children. I'm concerned about it going north, south, east, and west, whereas if we break it down. So we'll see what it looks like initially, but I love the idea. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Trustee Santos?
Thank you, President Cruz, and thank you so much, Superintendent House. And I want to piggyback off of Trustee Baker's point. And I know that I've pushed this before, I haven't done it in a while, but SB 195, we can apply for transportation funding. And so with that, students that are in construction zones or areas of high concentration of crime, we can apply for that funding at the state. So if we could do that, that would be great.
It's actually something that Chief Paul and I just most recently had some discussion in and around. Was that this week or last week? It was this week. So it's definitely something that we're exploring to learn more about the possibility.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I think Trustee Hernandez is in the.
Trustee Hernandez?
Awesome, thank you. Have other school districts used this model successfully before?
You're in again, okay. Have other school districts used this before?
Dr. Watts?
Yes, I probably will need assistance from Michael Love from the audience with that particular question.
And then my other question is, how is this different than, another HISD vehicle just carrying around iPads where parents would be able to enroll anyways?
I think the difference specifically in reference to having an available iPad goes back to what one of our trustees said just a little while ago, Trustee Allen. This is designed to be as nimble as possible and a support system. So having individuals in place versus just having a kiosk or an iPad in place. We want to be there to support them. What we know in many instances, some parents that may get frustrated with not being able to go through the process themselves, sometimes we'll walk away. And by having those support systems in place on the spot, in people and technology, can really assist in the process and changing the game with getting them enrolled as quick as possible.
Okay, thank you. And I know the Q&A stated that the enrollment unit will participate in at least 2 events per week. And so my question is, I know it says at least, so that means that it could be more, but there's at least 5 days in the week. So what would the enrollment bus be doing if it's not enrolling and going around and enrolling students?
I love your idea, and we definitely want to look at all possibilities in filling up those additional 3 days right now. We want to make sure, and I don't know, Dr. Watts, if you have anything else around this, or Mr. Love, feel free to jump in.
Sure, Michael, I'd love for you to jump in, but a part of this is also making it a larger, energized experience. So yes, we want to appeal to the individual family as needed, but imagine going into an apartment complex where staff is playing music, giving out swag, maybe treats to kids to create an energy and excitement about enrolling in the district. So all of that, of course, requires planning, coordination, and manpower. So I think we could do big organized events like that, but also maintain the agility on a day-to-day effort.
Okay, thank you.
I think you did a great job.
Mr. Love, I think she still had her first question, which was, have other school districts done this? That was
Good evening, everyone. Trustee Hernandez with that. We know LA Unified looked at this option and they've implemented something similar. But across the board, we have not seen a lot of districts look at implementing something like this, an enrollment mobile unit. I think it is somewhat unique, but we're trying to ensure that we meet the needs of all of our families in this region.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Trustee Wade?
My question is, will this bus, since we have enrollments, right now we have low enrollments, we have spaces in schools, will this bus have that ability to know where the spaces, the current empty spaces are, so that they can assign kids to schools that best meet their needs?
I definitely hear and see you thinking. It's definitely something that we will have the ability to do. We have the ability to know exactly where our lowest enrollment is and where we're struggling. And that's strategically how we'll be mapping some of what we're doing out moving forward in the future. So that is definitely the thinking that we'll be focusing on to ensure that we boost the enrollment in as many areas across the county and the city as possible.
Okay, so the questions that they will be asked in this, when they come to this mobile unit to meet their needs, they'll be asked questions about what their exact needs are as a reason why they maybe are not applying to school, period. So those, okay, thank you.
Trustee Bluford Daniels?
The question's been answered, but I do have another question that has arisen. What's swag? You said that they get their swag, pass out their swag. That's what you said. Pass out their swag.
Like shirt, hat.
Okay. Oh, yeah, some of y'all didn't know out there either. Y'all didn't know. Thank you.
I have one last question. So is this part of a bigger picture of efforts in terms of like increasing enrollment? What are some of those other efforts? Or I'm assuming we'll be getting a picture of that maybe on February 17th?
Yes, absolutely. It is a part of a larger strategy, to answer your question also, Trustee Wade. I think this is just one singular component. We'll be looking at data, deploying the mobile unit where data suggests that we should be, but this is a part of a bigger strategy with multi-prongs working toward the same effort.
Thank you. Okay, our next item held for discussion is G1, approval of certified appraisers for the teacher appraisal and development system for the school year 2021-2022. Trustee Wade.
Thank you. No, I don't have any questions.
Trustee Allen.
My question on this item is, why are we approving this list for TADS so late? The year is almost over. We're getting ready to implement a new instrument. Will the certified appraisal list for T-test be submitted in a timely manner? What's going on at this point?
I'm going to have our Chief Talent Officer, Mr. Grant Skinner, to share some insight here.
And I apologize for asking two questions at the same time, but the first one is, why is this so late?
Yes, thank you. I can answer both questions. The first, it is late. This normally comes before the board in, I think, October in a typical year. And there was some staff transition that resulted in a change there, and you should expect it at near the beginning of the year for T-tests.
Thank you.
Next item held for discussion is I-1, approval of vendor awards for purchases over $100,000 and ratification of vendor awards for vendor awards for purchases under $100,000. Any questions? Oh, I think I didn't clear the queue. Go ahead, Trustee Allen.
On a previous information sheet, there was data that Cummins Southern Plains Insurance was not approved. Was the insurance finally approved?
Ms. Legata, please.
Thank you. On which project, Dr. Allen?
22-12-06-54. The Cummins, I think it was, where am I?
So it's still pending?
It's still pending?
Mm-hmm.
Will, so it's still on the list, even though the insurance is not approved? We would still be, we would still be approving it as a vendor if it does not have insurance?
Ms. Legata?
Yes, ma'am. So what we do is we work the insurance up until the board date. If you approve this and we don't finalize the insurance, then we just never execute an offer with the vendor.
Okay, my other question that I have, and kind of the same thing, I see that this is done with a cooperative source well. When we do things like the cooperatives, are other vendors able to, and not just this one, but any, are other vendors able to apply if they are not a part of the cooperative, like Buy Board? If you're not a part of Buy Board, can you still be a vendor on one of our projects? That is a Buy Board project.
Ms. Legata?
So with any cooperative, the cooperative is the one that executes the procurement process. And so we would only be eligible to use vendors that have gone through their procurement process.
So I heard this question before, I think a couple of meetings back, that one of the people was saying that that there was another vendor with better prices. So is there, like, you can't be a vendor you cannot be an HISD vendor if we are working with Buy Board? I guess that answer was already asked. Yes. No, you cannot be a vendor if we're working with Buy Board. Okay.
Correct. We can only use the vendors that they've approved through their procurement process.
Okay. And with that cooperative, like for Buy Board, they don't charge us anything, but they are in control of who we can use as vendors.
So there's no fee, and with some cooperatives, we actually get a reimbursement check for using that cooperative. So money comes back to the district and for using some of the vendors through cooperatives.
But not with Buy Board?
I'm not sure what the rebate is with Buy Board.
Okay, thank you.
But many of the cooperatives, Buy Board is one of them, give rebate checks to the district for using vendors through their services.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Trustee Bluford Daniels?
Thank you, Trustee Allen, for that question, because one thing I did do is I went and did a little research on buy board, and everybody uses buy board, and that is TEA recommended amongst other things. And I looked at all the people that use it, and the list was so long that I couldn't go back and research what they're ordering, because it's very, very long. So have there been any rebates given back by buy board specifically? Not to a specific item, but has there been any rebates given back from buy board?
Ms. Licata?
So we get rebate checks. It's not on a particular vendor, if you will. What we do is typically annually through multiple cooperatives, they will give us an annual rebate check for using services through the cooperatives. And it's a percentage, I don't know off the top of my head, but it's a percentage based on usage.
Okay, and are we still just on that item that Trustee Allen was pulling? Because I wanted to ask some questions about some other items under finance.
Under the items?
Uh-huh.
That's fine.
Okay, go ahead. So then, I want to ask about that it says item H under finance, which is, let me increase this some before I run out of time. Assistance from professional recruiters to screen qualified candidates for hard-to-fill positions. And my question is, how is spending this $450,000 going to be used to recruit and fill positions for shortages that are already nationwide? Why are we spending that money if we've already got shortages nationwide?
Do you know the project number?
The project number, let me increase it. Don't stop my time,
I think she's referring to 22010604.
Where is it? It's page number, which one is this one?
It's, I believe, packet page 22.
I don't know what page number it is. Y'all, we're trying to get all this automated stuff together. Dr. Jasmine, I found my notes.
If I could jump in on this one.
Okay, please do.
So this one is more for my area. Right now, we only have vendors who do recruitment and look for folks nationwide in academic and instructional type roles, IT roles. I don't have a vendor where I can go out and have them look nationally for a treasurer or say a controller or an assistant controller or accountants. We're looking for a debt manager as well. So we have been struggling trying to fill some of these positions, some of these key positions. So we are asking for access to a vendor to help us look outside instead of just Texas or just our website, right, or LinkedIn or whatnot.
And I appreciate that, because I looked at that, I did a little research on them, this organization, and they're not even located here. They're primarily located, they have offices here. But I guess my concern is with people not knowing the landscape here in Houston specifically, being outside agencies or people who live outside of the area of HISD. So that's concerning for me to be out there soliciting for our district and not still understand necessarily. I mean, we could say we need a position for Pete Sung and we want him to have A, B, C, D, E, but if Pete Sung doesn't understand the landscape, then we could potentially be wasting our money by hiring Kim Sung from Phoenix and not understand HISD.
Well, but like accounting, treasury work, governmental accounting, that's not really going to be different. That's not going to be different from state to state, right? We follow GASB and you're not going to have the requirements for the job are not going to be that different.
And what I also can tell you, Trustee Bluford Daniels, is this is a very common practice in being in four different school districts. There are some organizations that have the skill set to be able to work, much like search firms do with principal positions, superintendent positions, assistant superintendent positions. So this is a very common practice in the talent world to look outside for support to be able to fill positions.
And thank you for that, but the concern still would be the fact that we've got a shortage nationwide. And everybody's going to be looking for someone, for something across the nation.
Thank you.
Trustee Guidry?
Thank you. And I just have a general question. I'm scrolling through all of these contract and the vendors, and I'm seeing quite a few of them that do not satisfy the MWBE requirements of HISD. And I'm just wondering, for instance, let's go to package page 41, college and career readiness. And I know the legend says that C-D means the awardee made a good faith effort. Are we making a good faith effort trying to locate vendors who actually do comply with HISD MWB requirements?
Ms. Legata.
So, Trustee Guidry, just a reminder that our MWBE paperwork provides 3 options in order to make a good faith effort. So this particular vendor did comply with our paperwork and make a good faith effort. And so vendors are not required to be an MWBE or subcontract with MWBE, but make a good faith effort.
And so I guess my follow-up question to that is, because that particular item only have one vendor, is it possible for us to seek additional vendors?
You may have to repeat your question. You went in and out several times.
Yeah, and I have a real bad echo. I apologize. My question is, for that particular item, it's only one vendor. Is it possible for us to seek additional vendors who not only just make a good faith effort, but who also can satisfy the MW? And I know you're saying that that does satisfy it, but not necessarily to me. If we have vendors out there who can, in fact, provide MWBE workers, I would prefer to have some of those vendors listed.
Ms. Legata.
Trustee Guidry, this is actually an amendment to a project that was already approved. So this is just simply a vendor name change. So there are additional vendors that are on this project. We're just bringing you this because they changed to their name.
I understand. I'm just stating generally for the future.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, next item held for discussion is I3, acceptance of grant funds in support of district-wide. Oh, the vendor awards? Oh. 220719, our packet page 30. RFP Benefits Administration.
Yes. My question is, it appears that we are outsourcing our benefits administration?
Ms. Legata.
So this is a third-party administrator, if you will. We're not outsourcing. This will be just someone who will help them with externals. So, for example, any enrollment changes or special enrollments, any billing that may need to be done. So this is simply a third-party administrator. I also believe they'll handle COBRA. There's a hotline that they'll man that hotline as well. So this is strictly just a third-party administrator to assist the benefits department.
Thank you.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
just wanted to make sure nobody was losing any jobs or.
No, ma'am.
Thank you, because our outsourcing has been kind of terrible lately.
Our next item, Trustee Bluford Daniels.
Just a quick question. My package page is 33. As we're talking about, let's see, this item number is 2209-0601. Oh, snap, I just lost it. Oh, HB. And as we're talking about cooperative theatrical supplies and equipment, and that's going to support, I see the vendors listed, that's fine, but it's going to fund various schools. Is there a way to be more specific about the funding of various schools? And the reason why I'm asking that question is because I want to make sure that those schools that previously may not have had enough support for their theatrical or magnet or programs, that they're a part of this pool that's going to capitalize on this money. Does that make sense,
Yes,
Alexis? Thank you.
Ms. Gatto?
So the purpose for this item is I believe that they have filed to be able to use ESSER, and the intent is that the director of the Fine Arts program wants to standardize in terms of what each school, the allotment towards each school. So yes, to answer your question, that would occur with this project, that it'll be standardized across the board for fine arts programs across the board through
And
the
I
ESSER
appreciate
funding.
that. So the fine arts school then that appears to have not been supported over the years for the most part, then they will be able to apply for this and be able to capitalize on this. And that concerns me with that various schools description, because it's not identified specific.
So-
I say specific because, there are some of us that know specifically who needs additional support.
Yes, sir. So the reason that we use various schools and departments is obviously when you approve it, we're required to only allow those budgets that we list. So that's why we leave it like that, so it's open to every school and department.
And I understand that, because I never questioned the various school things before, but because it's the supporting the fine arts program specifically, that amount of money, then I just want to make sure if we can get a listing at some point of those schools that it's supporting. Not trying to tell you how to spend the money, but I'd like to know that some of those schools, the Key and the Fleming, that need the support, the Forestbrook, that they get the support.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Okay, next item held for discussion is I3, acceptance of grant funds in support of district-wide and school-specific programs and authorization to negotiate and execute contracts required under the grants. Trustee Allen.
Thank you. And I'm going to proceed this first by saying, Attorney McBride, if I step out of my lane, please stop me. Okay. I was looking at the grants on here, and I had someone that wanted to give some money to HISD and could not find out how to give money to HISD. So we went on that first main page, and it says support HISD. But on that first main page, it does not tell you how to give money to HISD. It says go to community partnerships. And then when you go to community partnerships, you can't find out how to give any money straight to HISD. This person did not want to give the money to HISD Foundation because they get a cut. They didn't want the foundation to get a cut. So my concern is if somebody wants to give us $1,000, they should be able to get to the forms to give us that $1,000 and who to designate it to.
Ms. Brooks?
Yes, trustee. When a vendor or donor want to give money to HISD, they go through grant development, not community partnership. So if you go in the grant development on that page, it's a donation intent form, and they complete that form, and then they can submit it to grant development. It's not under community partnership.
Okay, I saw that part, and I'm just gonna preface it by I know how to get there. But when you're trying to get there and you look at that first main page, and
Yes,
you go
ma'am.
up under About Us, and you start looking about how, I need to give some money to HISD, how do I do it? The first thing you get to is support HISD. In my mind, if I want to give you $1,000, I'm not going to the grant department looking.
Well,
That's my problem.
Yes.
That when they wanted to give HISD some money, they couldn't figure out how to get it. That's all. Comment, the end.
Yeah, we'll look at that, and we'll make sure that those two pages are connected in some way. So
And right.
absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay. Next item held for discussion is approval of the February general fund budget amendment. Anyone in the queue? I have questions, but I'm trying to find, sorry. Oh, here we go. Exactly. Okay, so, my question is, what is, function 41? And please elaborate on the change.
Chief Reed?
Yeah, function 41 is general administration. I'm not sure which page you're looking at. There's two pieces in general administration that we're increasing this year. One of them, the $793,713, are positions in finance, budget, research and accountability, to support the ESSER project. There's going to be additional reports and reviews. We've also got additional work in the accounting office and budget office, so those are positions to support the ESSER grant. The $965,000.
Can I pause you there for just a second? So
Sure.
when you say positions to support the ESSER grant, so are they,
From the indirect cost that we generate.
so are they also paid with ESSER money, these positions? If they're temporary, I would think if they're only to support ESSER grant.
Indirectly, so it's the indirect cost revenue, so the $25 million that you see up in the revenues, it says federal revenue IDC ESSER, and I'm on packet page 57, where you go to that page on the screen. The $25 million right now that we're recognizing for ESSER indirect costs, that'll come out of those dollars. So it's not being paid for out of ESSER directly, but it's coming off the indirect costs that the district gets from the ESSER grant.
So why wouldn't it be, why wouldn't it be paid with ESSER money directly if it's to monitor ESSER money?
Well, usually the indirect costs are for administrative or support type costs that the general fund has. So we get indirect costs even on Title I. We get indirect costs on Title II, IDEA B, special revenue. So pretty much all special revenue accounts have an indirect cost rate that goes to support operating and managing the grants.
Okay,
But the people that are doing that are in the general fund.
Okay, so the indirect costs, it's not like extra money, it's coming from our fund.
That's correct.
Okay. And then $81 million is being taken from instruction, and this is strictly at the school level. Am I seeing that correctly?
So that is, I don't know if you remember back from presentations we did on use of ESSER dollars, there was that line that said ADA hold harmless. It was $88 million total, right? So that is recognizing that. So we're using that money that we had set aside to help fund the 21-22 budget. So that was a planned use of the ESSER dollars from July of last year, June of last year.
Okay, wait, let me make sure I'm hearing you correctly. So we're using money from Function 11
Correct.
to pay for,
So what we're doing is we're taking teacher salaries,
okay,
Function 11. We are transferring those expenditures over to ESSER.
okay,
So the expenditure goes away in the general fund,
okay.
and then we can reduce the budget in the general fund since we've moved the expenditures out.
And what's the purpose of doing that?
It's to help fund the deficit this year.
So we're essentially using ESSER money to plug our holes. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes.
Okay, that is very concerning. The 45 million for the, at least if I'm doing the math correctly, so the excess deficiency, or sorry, it's 40 million, right? Yes. Where, it looks like that's coming from the assigned fund balance, is that correct? Where did that 40 million come from?
Which 40 are you looking at?
The excess deficiency of estimated revenues under appropriations, over and under appropriations. It's in the third column. I'm looking at the budget amendment page, right? So
The 244 you're talking about?
mm,
See, 40.
it's the first page of the amendment. Sorry, I'm on the portal, so. I
Oh,
don't
that's the
know.
amendment. That's not a deficit. What that means is that we're basically, because we're reducing the budget, it's just taking basically the reduction in revenues of 26 And the reduction of the 66 in appropriations means that there's a net positive of 40 million.
Okay,
Because we're reducing our appropriations more than our revenues are going down.
but how are you reducing the appropriations?
The majority of that is that transfer to ESSER.
Okay, so again, it's plugging holes, right? If I'm understanding that correctly. Okay, thank you. Trustee Bluford Daniels.
Well, I just wanted some clarity with the instruction line item 11, that 81, almost 82 million, is that subtracted from the 88 million that we were initially discussed last year? Is this like a running total to keep us abreast of what that balance is?
Chief Reed?
Repeat that question, I'm sorry.
Oh, don't confuse me. Oh, repeat it. Oh, Lord Jesus. This 81, 82 million, we talked about the 88 million from last year, correct?
Right.
So this 81, almost 82 million from Function 11, the instruction, and I know that it's a use of ESSER funds, because we talked about that last year, utilizing that as an opportunity. So
Right.
is this 81, 82 million showing us of the 88 million, then this is 82 million minus the 88 million that we talked about, leaving about $6 million?
So you can, if you go to packet page 57, you'll see on function 11, it shows the pieces that make up that $81 million.
Okay.
Right, so part of it is an increase in what we will owe Texas Sanctions Academy. So that's a positive, that's an increase,
Okay.
right? And then we have that, then you see that $87 million being transferred to ESSER. And then the other decreases for early education and state compensatory, which is due to the loss of students.
I got you. I see it. I see it now.
Yep.
Thank you. I see it. Okay. I didn't pay attention to the ESSER ADA the whole harmless.
Right.
And what I can say and want to say as well is, as you all know, we're working with a third-party national organization around what this looks like. And some of this, we'll be sharing with you in the budget workshop, strategic workshop. We want to make sure they are there as well, so you can hear the insights, some of the recommendations that have come to the table. So there'll be more clarity around some of the recommendations overall that are coming to the table. Just FYI.
Trustee Dygard.
Thank you. Refresh my memory, why do we used to do, like every few months, we got amendments, like mid-year, or maybe it was mid-year, end of the year, right? Now we're getting them every month. Remind me, was that something at the state level we're now required to do? Or is that something you all brought to us to increase transparency on all this?
Yeah, so if you before it was, and board policy actually said semi-annually, so it's twice a year. So when I brought you CE Local back last fall, that we changed that to monthly on the budget amendments, but we'd already started doing that this past
Yeah.
year. So it's really to increase transparency.
Okay, that
And
was
so that
my
you see it monthly
recollection
rather
and
than getting
understanding.
everything all in February and June, because that's all we did in the past was February and June.
Yeah, okay. And correct me if I'm not understanding this, when you bring us a budget amendment, you've already changed how you're spending the money. It's kind
Correct.
of in arrears, if that's the right
Some
term
of
to
it
use
is, right? So, and that's why the board item is for approval of amendments and ratification.
for it. We've
right?
approved what you've already done.
Right. But for example, when we brought you the amendment for the time clock system, right? That was something that you had to approve, because we can't increase the bottom line without you approving it. Okay, so if the budget's gonna go up, the board has to approve it. You're ratifying the changes we've made between functions.
And when you put the public posting before we vote on a budget, my understanding was you can't, once it's posted, you can't change between functions, correct?
You talking
Between
about,
when
you talking
it's
about
posted and
June?
when we vote in June.
You talking about when we do the adopted budget?
Yes,
That's correct. So once we posted that,
okay.
yes.
And then end of year, there's something that we're held accountable to, or a rating or whatever, about how closely our end of year amendment matches what we said we were going to do and voted on up front, correct?
That's correct. It's not, so that's not part of school first, but it is a review by TEA to ensure that we didn't overspend a function.
Okay, so in theory, we're seeing all this, it's sort of like looking at your stock when you buy it and when you sell it, you're watching it as you go in the middle.
That's about right. It's a good example.
Okay. What I think would be helpful, at least for me and possibly my colleagues, is I think what happens is, we're looking at these different functions. I don't think we generally understand every single function and why things might move between these functions. And having a better explanatory up front or a little mini 101 training session for those who wanted deeper dive to understand this, so we don't have to have this conversation every single month.
We can definitely do that.
I think would go a long way in board development in this process. And I'm going to echo, however, because here's where I really want to understand now in this conversation this month is we've just plugged a funds, and I'm deeply concerned about what that bigger picture means, and that's what I'd like to see in these monthly presentations. So I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Trustee Wade?
On. Thank you, Trustee Cruz. My question is, all right, I'm looking at the budget, just the basic budget. Budget is of December, let's say 31st of 2021. What is other financing uses? What does that mean? There's a negative, I'm looking at just the basic budget, but I'm trying to understand what that is.
Chief Reed?
That is actually transfers out to pay for some debt. The general fund is obligated to, so maintenance tax notes that we sold several years ago. So it's a transfer out to our debt service to pay for that. It's also a transfer out for the time clock system that we're funding.
Okay, and mind you, I'm new, so I'm
Sure,
trying
no,
to-
absolutely.
okay. Can I ask another question on
Sure.
that while we're on budget? Over to the child nutrition budget is a whole plug from December the 31st of 2020, right? A budget. We have a surplus deficit result of operations, and we go into 2021, we have a surplus. I'm trying to understand where, was that an ESSER fund plug, or?
Which page are you on?
I'm sorry, I'm in our basic budget. I'm in the financial report, and I'm going through this, so I'm trying to understand the ESSER, the whole plugging.
Are you on page 61?
No, I'm not in, I'll table this for now. I'll ask later.
Trustee Baker?
Yes, thank you. In reviewing the budget, I have a similar question to Trustee Dygart and to other colleagues here. And I asked this question, and it was answered, but I have a follow-up question. The question I asked was, the deficit as of July 1st, 2021 was $105 million. And then the proposed budget as of February 28, 2022 was $258 million. And so my question was, or approved budget as of January, even I'll go there, January 31st, 2022, $299 million. How did that increase, occur, $200 million in that 6-month period? My first question, you want just one at a time?
Oh, go ahead.
And my second question is, by using the extra funds to settle that deficit, A, is it going to be permanent? B, will it be done without scaling back on essential services for next year projected? For next year, and I know we're going to hear a lot in the workshop. And then my last question, this is 4 questions totally, is will we also, consider where money is needed in programs like special education, things that are being brought up like that. I've heard a lot along my campaign trail, special ed, other things going forward.
Okay.
So I know that was a lot, so.
Chief Reed?
I've got maybe 3 of them, so I might have missed one. First, the actual deficit, you've got to include the total other financing sources and uses, so it's $285 million, where it says net change. That's the row that actually shows what the deficit is. The reason that it grew, a big portion of it is carryover from the prior year.
Okay.
What carryover is it's encumbrances and commitments that we had in 2020-21 that did not liquidate by year end. So we carry the budget and the expenditure that'll happen in that next year over. That was $160 million. So we take those dollars and we set them aside in our fund balance, or it's almost like just setting aside over here in a savings account. So when the bills come in, we just pay for it out of that. So it's not a structural deficit.
Okay.
Those dollars are set aside. So $160 million of that is from the carryover of prior year commitments. We also, back in June, we had an amendment to increase teacher salaries.
Okay.
That was about $33 million.
Okay.
We've also added $9.2 million for doing a time clock system district-wide.
Okay.
Those are the kind of the 3 main things that make that up.
Okay.
The second one on the ESSER, that's one time. That's not recurring. That's just a transfer of expenditures over to ESSER for this year. But the deficit that's there is still there.
Yeah, because I just want to make sure that it just wasn't a Band-Aid for this year.
Well, it is. It is. It's covering costs for this year, but the structural issue is still there.
Okay. All right. Okay.
And then the last one I heard was about looking at the different programs. We're absolutely doing that within the strategic plan. So we're looking at special ed, we're looking at regular ed, state comp ed. We're looking at all those additional supports.
Okay.
You said there were 4. Which one did I miss?
3 out of 4, man. You did good. Thank you.
Next item held for discussion is K1, approval of proposed revisions to board policy AE local educational philosophy, second reading. That's K1 on the February 10th agenda. Oh. Trustee Hernandez.
Hi. I do want to say that I know that we talked a lot about Constraint 1.2, and I see the changes in there. So thank you, Dr. Matney, for that. I know in the Q&A, it says that there's going to be a presentation over this item.
Yes, that's the one Dr. Maddie, if you want to come on up.
That's a different presentation. That's A3.
Good evening, trustees. Yes, this is a presentation about the new pieces of K1, the AE local. The teach piece went so well last time when we did that, when we had some new content, we decided that we would try to repeat that format. So Trustee Cruz, is this the time to head off the questions?
Absolutely.
Perfect. All right, so we'll get the presentation pulled up. So as I said last time when we presented AE Local, I believe it was in November, December, we walked through all the methodology for the new component, so we wanted to replicate that again with Constraint 5 progress measures 1 and 3. We went through several iterations of this. We worked closely with HERC, as we discussed last time, and went through several iterations of this.
There are a few numbers in the PowerPoint that I'm going to point out that do not match what's in policy. The policy in your packet is correct, so I'll point that out as we go through. Because we had submission timelines and we went through several things last minute, I'll point those out as we go through this evening. So Constraint 5, as amended at the dais a few months ago, says the superintendent shall not allow the district to operate without providing high quality, full day pre-kindergarten 3, pre-kindergarten 4, and kindergarten programs for all students throughout the district at locations based on a data-driven, centralized method for identifying areas of highest need. Progress Measure 1 states the percent of projected state pre-kindergarten 4 eligible students with access to an open seat in a full-day early learning program within their zoned elementary boundary will increase 8 percentage points, actually from 74% this school year to 82% in 23-24. The subsequent slides are going to outline components of this, how we're going to calculate each one of these pieces. So when we talk about what the projected pre-K4 need is, what we are doing is using the PEAMS Fall Snapshot data. That's the last Friday in October. We do a dipstick of what our data looks like. Students. We're going to look at do they, as kindergartners, meet the eligibility for pre-K as defined by the state? Do they receive free and reduced lunch? Are they a child of a military veteran? There's a lengthy list of qualifications. So we're going to take that data set and we're going to apply it to the zoned elementary school based on their address. So we're going to make some assumptions that they would have been an eligible pre-K student the year before. Then we're going to look at budgeted pre-K seats. We're going to look at projections, the number of pre-K students that were projected to accept a seat for the following school year's enrollment. So we're going to look at, these are our actual, what we consider students that are going to be in our programs. So then we have to determine the seats needed. We have to see the gap, that difference, that how many seats are open that we're not filling, or how many more seats do we need. So by individual elementary zone, we're looking at, was the budgeted number greater or equal to the projected number? So for example, if we look at current kindergartners project backwards, if that's 40 students for an elementary school, but our projections are showing 20, that's a 20 student difference there. If it's not, how many additional seats do we need? So we're going to look at these and compare them, and our total seats needed are going to just be the sum of every elementary zone seat. So one example is we have one elementary with no pre-K seats available at their school. Nothing's projected. But they have an early childhood center there. That's going to count as if we have any students that could be eligible being in their zone, because that early childhood center's in their zone. So then to calculate the progress measure, we're going to look at the percent of projected seats that are open. We're going to add the total projected, or subtract the total projected pre-K4 eligible minus the pre-K4 needed, divided by the total projected eligible. So in 21-22, that number, like I said earlier, is 74. The 23-24 target is 82%. So we want to go up 8 percentage points. So that's how we're going to calculate. We had several considerations as we set that target. Campuses without a pre-K within their zone. We have some campuses right now in their zone that do not offer pre-K, so we were very cautious with that 8 points to be thoughtful about what that looks like, where opportunities could be, where we could grow the 8. But we also have campuses that are at capacity that need more seats, so we might not be able to offer them yet until we enter into some type of bond process. So then for 5.3, this is the new constraint progress measure that was recommended by HERC in our conversations with them. The percent of pre-kindergarten and kindergarten classrooms requesting waivers will decrease by 3 percentage points from 24% in 1920 to 21% in 23-24, without the average number of students in waiver classrooms above 26. So if you'll recall, when I brought the waiver item a few months ago, the state has included pre-K in the waiver process now. And so we wanted to acknowledge some of the conversation that happened here with trustees and knowing what classroom size needed to look like, and then also that cap on the waiver classrooms. So this metric is a little bit easier. It's not as multi-step, but we're gonna look at the number of pre-K3, pre-K4, and kindergarten classrooms that are requesting waivers divided by the total number of those classrooms. So that's gonna be the metric for the first component, and then the limitation for classrooms over 22. We're looking at the sum of the total waiver classroom size divided by the total classrooms with waivers. So we're just looking at that average classroom size in those grade levels. And we have to meet both components to meet this progress measure. We can't just meet one and not the other. They work interchangeably. And the reason we chose the 26 as the cap is we wanted to make sure that, that we were holding ourselves accountable to not trying to reduce waivers by overloading one classroom. So because it works in concert here, we wanted to have that cap to make sure that we don't lower the number of waivers, but our class size average is 29, for example. We want to make sure we're really focused on doing both at the same time. So that includes the explanation of those two new components. Trustee Hernandez,
Thank you.
you still have more questions?
Yes. So do we have the number of waivers for this school year?
Not off the top of my head. That was part of the board approval a couple of months ago, so we have it, but I don't have it right here this evening.
Okay. And for 5.2, I know that you're using the number of students that we have in kindergarten this year. Correct?
Correct.
So if we are trying to increase our enrollment, why would we use that number?
Are you looking, Trustee Hernandez, you said 5.1 is what you're looking at?
I believe 5.2, sorry, yeah, 5.1, 5.1.
So this is really about having students with access to an open seat. And yes, we are increasing enrollment, but remember, we're looking at, when we ran the data, this is why it took several iterations. When we ran the data, there were many more students that are sitting in our kindergarten classrooms right now that were not enrolled with us as pre-kindergarten students. So there were many more available, there were students that we were missing that we did not capture in pre-K. And so the intent of this is getting at what that number is and then coupling that with enrollment efforts to ensure we bring students in as kindergarten students, but making sure that they're within their elementary boundary, knowing that all the research that HERC has done in concert with us says that they're more likely to enter pre-K if they're closer to their campus.
So do we know how many seats we need in order to meet this goal?
Dr. Manning?
I don't have the number, but there are numbers behind those percent, so I can get that for you.
Okay, those are all my questions for now.
Trustee Dygard?
Thank you. So TEA on their website references something called the High Quality Pre-K District Report. Is that something, and I couldn't find like a link to districts. Is that something that that you all have?
Dr.
Do you know
Manning?
what I'm talking about?
I have heard of it, but I'm not aware of any work behind it.
Okay, because my question was going to be, what does the report say about the quality that we're currently providing? Because that tends to be a conversation of the subjectivity of high quality. And, they clearly have a metric, and I was just I am curious to know, as we're deciding how to measure our programming in this constraint, what do they see as our strengths and deficits in providing high-quality pre-K to our kids? But this isn't something that we actually have. I kind of was looking at this as a root cause. I mean, it's not really what it is, but you know what I'm saying. Which then leads to my next question. We now have 3 constraint progress measures. Thank you for that. 2 of them get at the number of children in a room and the number of children with an adult, right? And when I look through the different criteria that TEA lists for high-quality pre-kindergarten, student-teacher ratio is one of them. Not questioning the merits of class sizes. I'm questioning why we're not considering any of these other criteria for high-quality pre-K, and we're considering 2 that have to do with something that are very similar.
Dr. Maddie?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. That's exactly what our conversation was. So Constraint Progress Measure 2, that's already been approved through this process, states the district student to instructor ratio in pre-K will decrease from 15:1 to 11:1. So we're getting at that teacher to student ratio through that constraint. And a little bit with Constraint 3 is Constraint Progress Measure 5.3 as well. When you're talking about the capping the waiver at the 26, making sure that they're below that, which is certainly not ideal. So there are multiple different metrics. These are the ones that we wanted to solve immediately, and then move on to some of the other pieces like the training for the teachers and those. We're keenly aware of the TEA set, as well as some of the national data sets.
So why are you choosing this metric for the third progress measure instead of one of the other areas like curriculum, teacher qualifications, family engagement, and so forth?
Dr. Maddie?
It was really about the timing and setting of when these happen. So we wanted to tackle these first, get students in, get our structure around class sizes set. It's going to take some shifting of things, and so we want those structures in place. We already have what's considered high quality curriculum. We aren't necessarily writing research reports about it, but we felt like if we could get these things in place and structurally sound, then we could start measuring some of those other pieces.
Awesome, thank you.
Trustee Guidry?
Thank you, Dr. Matt, for your report. A couple of questions. On package pay 91, you have here target setting considerations. And you're looking at campuses without a PK within the zone, campuses at capacity needing more seats. What exactly are you considering? Are you considering at some point adding pre-Ks to these zones or adding more seats?
So that's actually a part of the strategic plan and a portion of the updates that we're looking to provide. But you're spot on. Expansion is definitely something that we are focusing our efforts on and looking forward to sharing with the larger audiences and the board.
And just a follow-up question to that, were there any pre-Ks that were closed down due to not having student participation, particularly going into the 2021 school year?
So I think your question was, you kind of went in and out, whether there were any pre-Ks that were closed due to lack of enrollment. Is that what it was?
Yes.
And not that we're aware of, But we'll make certain that that's the accurate answer and get it to you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Trustee Santos.
Thank you, President Cruz. Superintendent House, I guess my question is going to piggyback off of some of my colleagues. So within these zones, will principals be required to have mandated pre-K classes, even if they might not necessarily want and/or they think they need them?
And so, like, without diving into the strategic plan, I think you're essentially asking a very well-crafted question to.
Additionally, I would like to ask Dr. Matney and Superintendent House if you've, the high-quality pre-K that we keep touting, the new studies that have come out about the drop and once the students hit fourth grade after being in these high-quality pre-K classes, that their test scores seem to drop. So they might go up for first, second, and third grade, but once they hit fourth grade, and so on, their love for learning ceases to exist. So just, if we can get some data on that, that would be great. At the pre-K that's as defined by, anyway, we'll talk about that later. But yes, so that was my question for that. What else? That's it for now. Thank you.
Trustee Wade.
Thank you, Dr. Matney. My question is about when you need to take kids back that are currently entering kindergarten or first grade, and you feel that they need to be held back for some reason, if that's the decision, how, I guess my question is, how, with the new program, will you discern if if the children are not ready to move forward or need to be put back?
So specifically around retention.
Retention.
And Dr. Matt, you're more than welcome to share some insight.
I mean, is that something y'all been thinking through?
So retention is something that we think through in public education on an annual basis,
right,
in combination with the parent. Dr. Watts, I don't know if you want to share any insights around our beliefs around retention. Retention.
Philosophically, my beliefs about retention in kindergarten.
Mike.
Being that it's not a requirement.
Being that it's not a requirement, what is my philosophical belief about retention in kindergarten?
And for me, before you answer that, Dr. Watts,
I'm like, wait, what y'all trying to do?
regardless of whether it's required or not, which it should be. It was interesting in gathering some data while going from state senator to state senator this past week, because that was one of my big pushes, was to make sure that there was more legislation to say kindergarten needs to be required. But in the state of Texas, right now, there are only 17,000. I thought there would have been a lot more that are qualified to be in kindergarten that are actually not in. I thought the number would have been a lot higher. So even though it's not required, a big number of people are doing it anyway, a large number. In terms of retention specifically, I think it should be a combination of parent and school. There are some states that are moving in that direction to say if certain grade level or certain students don't meet particular objectives by X grade level, then retention has to happen or summer remediation has to happen. But I think developmentally, you have to be very careful about making that decision. I think it has to be in combination with parent and family.
Yes, agreed.
Yep.
You want to retain the
Dr. Matney, thank you, because I had a lot of the same questions Trustee Dygart did, because I was like, I feel like we're focusing on almost the same thing, so that's really helpful to know. I would like to get more information maybe on, like, if you say we have high-quality curriculum for pre-K, and I do remember this being an item that we approved, I think, last year. Maybe just sharing some data around that, and that could be a board referral later, that's fine. Let's see, the next item held for discussion is L1 Debt Management Activity Report. Anyone in the queue? Okay. Next item is L2, Budget to Actual Report. Okay, I have a couple questions and I'll try to make it fast.
Okay.
So is this, and I went back and I looked at least for a year and a half. I don't remember seeing this as an agenda item before. So Glenn, please elaborate.
You're correct. This also was part of CE Local that I brought you last fall for us to start doing quarterly budget to actual reports. And it's simply just kind of showing you where we are compared to last year at the same time. It's really just more informational, just so you can start seeing that. But no, the board has actually never seen this before that I'm aware of.
Okay. Yeah.
And this is the first time we've done this, right? So
that's what I thought. I was looking at it last night. And I thought, I've never seen this before. I mean, it looks, the format's similar. So I wanted to be sure, and I really do appreciate, I think that is critical information for us to have as trustees. So glad to know that we'll be getting that quarterly. Okay. So we need to go back to, do we need to make a motion, Lisa, for A3? What do we do? Yes. Okay. Anybody want to?
Yes, I move that we bring agenda item A3 back from the table, please.
We have a motion by trustee Dygard and a second by trustee Bluford Daniels. Please vote. We have 9-4, 0 against, 0 abstentions. Superintendent House, we are ready for your update.
We're getting reports that is no bueno.
That's what we just voted on that.
Oops, sorry. I thought we voted on the other thing.
No.
But, well, I'm on
Thank you, Madam President. Just a couple of items. Since we've been in this meeting today, we have decided to close school for tomorrow for a couple different reasons. Number one, out of an abundance of caution, and then we've had a number of school districts in and around the area that have closed as well. So it was important to ensure that we respect our educators, because many of our educators have students that are in those districts as well that would be affected. So it would affect our human capital on our campuses. So again, to be safe, on top of the idea of knowing that we would really have a tough time with the number of absences tomorrow, we have closed our campuses and closed business for tomorrow. Now, because of the warming pattern that should happen tomorrow, because the sun supposedly be out, we should be warming back up by mid-morning, afternoon. We will move forward with regular athletics for tomorrow because of that warming. We do have other school districts that are doing the same. We feel like it's safe, and the warming trends show that we'll move forward. The last thing that I'll mention, President Cruz and I have had the discussion around, of course, a strategic update on the 17th. We're looking forward to providing both that strategic plan update as well as budget update as well. As I indicated, we're working very closely with a third-party vendor to take a look at several different things that I think you'll be very interested in learning more about. There's been a lot of work that has gone into this strategic plan, and I know you all are extremely eager to gather more insight, and we're looking forward to providing that insight as well. President Cruz, given the time and late hour, given the weather, that I will end my comments.
Okay, so we're not going to do A3?
Yes. And I will invite Dr. Madney.
Dr. Mandy, 60 seconds or less, thank you.
All right, so I'll get started as they're pulling the PowerPoint up. In the fall, we reviewed, you might remember we reviewed the results. This is Goal 3, Progress Measure 3 about industry-based certifications. We reviewed the results for 11th graders at the end of last school year, and we discussed supports for those 11th graders. This is a follow-up to include, it's just a touch point to include the data for 9th, 10th, and 12th graders from the end of last school year, to look at the IBC process as a whole across all those grade levels. Page 8 of the report contains more background information about industry-based certification if you want to learn more about that process in HISD. For example, some IBCs require students to be 18 before they can actually sit for the assessment. So Goal 3 states, there we go, the percentage of graduates that meet the criteria for CCMR is measured in Domain 1 of the State Accountability System will increase 8 percentage points from 63 with our 17-18 graduates to 71 for 22-23 graduates as reported in 2024. So here we have our red line is our goal line. So that looks at multiple years out and what our goal needs to be in order to achieve that 71. The blue line is the actual score, our CCMR score. So this is our overall for Goal 3. The purple line indicates that score if we remove the military data and the CTE data. Those are two components that we knew were going to be removed starting this year. And so we wanted to show you what that level playing field was going to look like. And you trustees that were part of the goal setting process might remember this was how we set our goal. We actually looked at that data without the military and CTE to ensure that we were looking at apples to apples. So you can see how that came together. The blue and the purple converged there with our class of 2020 grads. We came in at 62. 63 was our target, and that again was for our goal. This is a lagging indicator. Our CCMR is from the prior year, and so we're looking at 2020 grads. Next time we'll be looking at 2021 grads, so even though they've crossed the stage, we don't get all the full reports until the year after. So Goal Progress Measure 3.3, the percentage of students who by the end of grade 11 have demonstrated career readiness through an industry-based certification will increase 18 percentage points from 0 in 2019 to 18 in 2024. So that 0 was not because we didn't have any students sitting for industry-based certification exams. The state changed how the data changed hands between the state, the industry-based certification providers, and districts. And so that year was a non-year in data terms, but looking at increasing to that 18, we've got our actual data with our new data interchange processes that we're monitoring now. So on this slide, you'll see the orange bars are our 10th graders. Blue are those 11th graders that we've already talked about, and green are our 12th graders. So the blue line is the 3.2 metric trend line, and then the red is, of course, the target for each of those 11th grade years. We chose to monitor 11th graders because it was an early indicator for where students needed to be once they crossed over and became seniors and then graduated, hopefully achieving this. So one thing I really want to point out here is this really shows that our industry-based certification program is successful. One example is students, if you'll look in 2018, 2019, we were at 0%. In 1920, 11th graders were at 10%. And in 2021, as seniors, they were at 19%. So we are really monitoring the data, looking at where we can improve our programs, where programs need to be in order to get students in those IBC courses, taking those tests, getting them ready for career. So our percentage of students with disabilities, we see that same trend of those 11th graders as 11th graders last year, 1920, they were at 7 percentage points. In 2021, they were at 11. So we see that same growth in looking at who's achieved this already as 11th graders, how can we recruit more as 12th graders, and again, those trends going up for our students with disabilities. This chart here is the in counts. The last time we presented this was a request of trustees that we provide. Just, are we talking about 8,000 students? Are we talking about 13,000 students, especially with students with disabilities? What are our in counts? What are the numbers behind the percentages? So we wanted to provide that here again for trustees. And then next steps, encourage teachers to become certified in those IBC areas of study, providing funding for IBCs to campuses. The range of the cost of an industry-based certification exam ranges from $29 to $425 per student. So that's a significant investment in order to help continue that for our campuses. And then engage more students with disabilities and English learners in the industry-based certification programs. And that concludes this presentation.
Trustees, questions? Trustee Bluford Daniels? Was that from last time?
That was from last time.
Okay. Sorry.
I can think of something.
Trustee Dygard.
Thank you. On your last slide, so encouraging teachers to become certified in an IBC area of study. What does that look like? Like, how are we deciding what programs we'd like on a campus and giving some kind of an incentive to the teachers or supporting them through that? And like, give me an idea of the thought process so that you're approaching this in a strategic way.
Yeah. Dr. Matt, you want to share some insight?
Yes, and I know that Mr. Johnson, who's over that program, may be able to come in and be more eloquent than me, but absolutely. So looking at where there's some alignment with current teachers that are certified in areas and seeing how we can encourage them to have that overlap, because they do have to be certified in order to teach those IBC courses. So just looking at some of that overlap and then encouraging to grow those programs.
Maybe I need to be more specific. So are we looking at, these are programs we'd like to add to a campus? How do we encourage existing staff to get certified in those programs? Or how to expand on a campus existing programs, or both?
Dr. Medley?
Both, and Mr. Johnson, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe both from what I've heard.
Yes.
Industries.
So we would be, thank you for the question, Trustee Dygard. Yes, so we would be looking at specific programs programs of study that the campus is offering, and then back working those programs, identifying teachers that would be, that are interested, paying for their certification, working with them, bringing in folks from industry to meet with them so that they can be prepared to take these exams. So yes, it is a very strategic approach.
So one part of the equation is having the program, having enough teachers. The other part of it is encouraging, I'm imagining this is another challenge, is getting students into the programs, right? So what does that look like?
So, we have our various programs, our campuses, and so what we'd be looking at is that, we go in and, let's say a student's doing a program of study in, let's say, welding, all right? So what we're looking at is capitalizing on the program of study that the student's doing. They're taking the welding classes. So the capstone experience on that is going to be the certification, because then they can take the theoretical, what they're learning, the practical that they're learning, and then they're going to have an industry-based certification that they can go in. So a lot of it is just, sitting down with students and saying to them, by working on this exam, you're going to have credentials to go out into the workforce and be able to capitalize not only on the learning that you have, but you'll actually have an industry-based certification to back that up.
And what are the challenges you've been encountering in this process? Are there different populations of kids that you're, they're, like I see in here, engaging more students with disabilities and ELs in this process? I'm presuming based on this, these are specific groups that you're targeting.
Correct. I mean, it's just as in all types of programs, in our schools that, unfortunately, historically certain populations have not been invited to participate in programs. I think one of those would be like the SAT test. For years, L students were not encouraged. We really began to change the narrative as a district and really go in and speak with campus leadership that that we want all students to take the SAT. And we've used that same strategy when it comes to our students sitting for the industry-based certifications. One of the, I don't have the specifics, but we do have industry-based certification exams where students can actually receive accommodations for their learning disabilities. So yeah, so those are, like I say, those are some of the strategies that we've been deploying. A lot of it, like I say, is just really talking to teachers, looking, if we see a large L population, we want to make sure that that L students are sitting for those exams, and if they're not, we go in and we really investigate that and dig deeper into that to make sure, and again, that's, you've seen some of the increases that we've had over the last few years for our SWDs and L students.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Trustee Bluford Daniels.
Thank you, Madam President. Just real briefly, Dr. Madden, thank you for the red line, for the charts and graphs to show what the goal is. Thank you. I'm sure everybody can appreciate that. And as I've always said from day one, when I first came on the board, I'm a person, even from my background in industry or in management, I hate acronyms. And I hate acronyms because we assume that everybody knows what it is. And let's not assume that, even though I heard in the presentation, IBC, industry-based, and then the superintendent was explaining to me as well. But let's just be clear and break that out, Rick, as we prepare these presentations so that everybody can understand what we're talking about. And then also, can you give me any examples of any of those industry-based programs? For instance, is there like TWIC card preparedness or readiness? Since obviously the Port of Houston is industry. So is there something like that?
Sure, we can have our gentleman come on back up, and we'll share a little bit of several different industry-based certifications, and I'm sure you can rattle off a few right off the cusp.
Yeah, so we have, some of the ones that in our NCCER, it's our National Center for Construction Education. So this is a basic one that students, it goes across a number of the trades. And one of the real advantages of that one is it's a certification students can receive in like 10th grade. And then they can then go and get an additional certification that goes into a specific trade area like welding or construction management. Another one that we're utilizing a lot is what we call our OSHA 30. Our OSHA 30 is an industry standard certification that's for workforce safety. So this is one that where we have programs of study where we may not have a specific certification, but that students can can utilize that, go right into the workforce. And again, like I say, it is an establishment. We have numerous certifications, of course, in various fields, in all of our, cosmetology, all of our programs that we have out there are going to have, we're working very hard to find an industry-based certification that matches up. Now, in order to get the CCMR point, it has to be tied back to the actual curriculum that the students are taking. So, again, it's a cooperative process that we have with schools where we go in. We look at the courses that they're offering. We look to see if that meets the state standards for us to provide the certification. And that's the process that we go through.
And I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I appreciate that explanation, because that way everybody can somewhat understand. For instance, like you mentioned about the OSHA 30 certification, or preparing it for them. And I would also suggest, I know that we have medical assistants in some places, or do we, medical assistants? If we don't, then definitely consider it, because I thought about our students, as my husband was talking to a medical assistant, or nursing assistant at the hospital just the other day. And she took charge of everything going on in that room, but she said, my plans are to go to school for nursing. So that I say that because if we can get them in the door and arouse their interest in various things, of course, in fields that we know that are going to be around for a very, very long time. So that I wanted to make that point. So thank you for that clarity.
Trustee Hernandez.
Thank you. I know that you all stated that you're targeting students with disabilities and ELs. How do we know that this is not going to backfire and become students being projected into only taking industry-based certifications and not going to college or?
That's a great question, and really appreciate you raising that, Trustee Hernandez. For years, it's been unfortunate. CTE has been sort of, was defined as that. And the HISD has really invested in our programs and really changed that narrative. I'll just give you an example. Last fall, we had Corpus Christi came down to visit our maritime program at Austin High School. And we had two of our students that gave their testimonials to why this program had made such an impact. And I think every trustee here should be extremely proud. Those students, one of those students is heading off to do maritime program at University of Houston, and the other one at Texas A&M, both in the top 10%. So I just really want to applaud the district, because we really have worked hard to change the narrative that when students take our CTE classes, they're taking courses that give them confidence, give them a sense of place, a sense of purpose. But at the end of that journey, our hope, our expectation is they're going to take what we have imparted with them and go that next step. That could be a level 1 stackable certificate, an Associates of Applied Science, a bachelor's degree, and eventually a master's and a doctorate. So thank you for that question.
Thank you. Are we keeping data just to make sure that there's not some type of tracking going on?
Correct.
And that's data that you could share with the board at some point?
I'm sorry. Yes, we can. I mean, yes, we could definitely pull rosters and show, sort of the wide variety of students that are in. We have high schools, mentioned Austin High School, where almost every student is involved in some type of CTE program, and this is true across our campuses. I mean, the district has invested a tremendous amount in building out specific programs that really are some of the showcase programs across the country. And when we're building those programs out, we're looking at it being very inclusive. When you walk into like I said, when you go down into our labs and you talk to students, you find students from all across every GPA, students that are involved in athletics, in band. It's a very, like I say, and I appreciate that question, because it, unfortunately in many districts, it is not that way. You walk into the CTE classroom and it's sort of where students that didn't quite have a place found themselves. In HISD, I can assure you, and we can certainly supply the data to show that our programs are incredibly inclusive in what we're doing.
Thank you.
Sure.
And trustees, I just want to, I've been trying to monitor the weather. or whatnot. So I know there's a couple more questions in the queue. We've dropped to right about 30 degrees or whatnot. And even though the ground temperatures are okay, I just want to make sure that we have safe travels home. So we want to practice brevity so we can move forward.
And all these people have to get home to their families.
Yes. Trustee Baker.
In lieu of that comment, and you're right, I'm gonna just hold my question till the future. Thank you so much for your concern. Thank you.
And you can always
Everything.
submit your questions as a board referral, especially
Yes.
if they're follow-up to what we discussed. Trustee Wade.
Mine is, my quick comments are basically just thoughts. If CCMR data or basically is state-controlled, and it seems like they're tardy, and when they report that information, it seems
Yes.
like they do that really late. Is there a way to encourage the state? These are just, we don't need to discuss it, it's more just thoughts, rolling thoughts. What levers are planned, and I know this was asked, incentives to encourage teachers to get extra certifications, because HISD kind of has a trouble with our dual certification as it stands. Can we highlight companies that are hiring our students equal to the colleges that they've been accepted to? And ninth grade CCMR Fest, where companies in military can showcase at that early age of high school or even eighth grade. They're just suggestions. I'll leave it at that. Bye.
Thank you.
Okay, and trustees, just a reminder, so tomorrow we are scheduled for our training. We may be just starting delayed. I will let you know tonight, a definitive answer. With no further business to discuss, the board is now adjourned at 7:32 p.m. on February 3rd, 2022. Our next meeting is our regular monthly meeting on Thursday, February 10th, 2022. Buenas noches.